Erev Tov. Thank you all for coming tonight. Truly an honor to have such a distinguished crowd here. To the many community leaders who have joined us, we're honored by your presence. Rabbi Avi Weiss, Rabbi Shmuel Hain, Rabbi Alan Silverstein, Rabbi Barry Dov Katz, Rabbi Stephen Exler, Rabbi Yossi Blau, Rabbi Tully Hartstark, Ambassador Danny Kurtzer, Dr. Gary Rosenblatt, and to everyone who is here for the meaningful tribute that we are honored to host at SAR. Stephen and Edith, when you came to meet with me a short time ago, and you told me that you wanted SAR to be a place to honor Yehuda's memory, and we walked through the building and you chose the space that we're going to speak about. While I did not have the privilege of knowing Yehuda personally, the memories that you, Ilana, and so many others have shared with me about who he was made a lasting impression on me and on the people around us. In the description of that event that we'll read about this week, Ma'amad Har Sinai, Torah tells us, V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot ve'et halapidim. The entire nation saw the voices emanating from Har Sinai. They trembled, and as we know, it was an experience which we were commanded to forever remember. But there's something strange that so many Mefarshim note about that description. Ro'im et hakolot. They saw the voices. You can't see voices. We hear voices. What is the message that the Torah was trying to convey with those few words? Rabbeinu Bachya and others explain that sometimes we speak of understanding the deeper meaning of things as seeing, even if they cannot be physically visualized. The event of Matan Torah was so powerful, and the messages so deeply ingrained in the people who experienced it, that the best way to describe it was Ro'im et hakolot, that they truly saw something that was most powerful and everlasting. As the Gemara teaches us, Lo tehei shmi'ah gedola miriyah. Seeing is much more powerful than hearing. Hearing is not quite the same as seeing. But there are times that we're able to hear voices that make such an impression upon us that we actually see them. And Rabbeinu Bachya actually points out that this happens much earlier in the Torah, when Yitzchak Avinu, who was not able to see, said to his son, Re'ei reach b'ni kireach sadeh asher beiracho Hashem. I see the sweet smell of my son, and I'm inspired to give him a bracha. Yitzchak was no longer able to see his son, but his other senses took over and allowed him to see what was no longer physically present. And he felt as if he was able to continue seeing. Stephen and Edith, Ilana and Ari, Ian and William, Samantha, who took the night, Eitan and Simi, Liati. I cannot imagine how difficult it is to face each day and not to see your beloved son, brother, and uncle. I know that is a void which will be there forever. Your decision to dedicate our guidance department's office at SAR, one of the very few spaces in this building, as so many of you know, one of the only spaces that has 4 walls, and where children often prefer not to be seen, for their privacy to be respected and honored, but for their voices to be heard, will serve as a lasting tribute to Yehuda, and will make a difference for SAR children, current and future, for many years. You have chosen the words of our theme of the year this year at school, V'yasita hayashar v'hatov, to appear on the dedication space. I know that Yehuda was yashar, but perhaps more significantly, tov, simply good. And I hope that we will live up to those expectations with the work that we do in this space, allowing kids to be both yashar and tov, helping them to find their way, and allowing them to understand the goodness that lies in each and every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Krauss. We'll have much more to say about SAR a bit later on. Before I introduce our first speakers, I also just want to thank so many of you who've come from near and far, in addition to many of the people mentioned. We'll hear from some of them later on as well, but I do want to single out from Chicago, our Mechutanim, Aaron and Ilana's parents, Albert and Judy Milstein, have come. From the American Jewish Committee, which is all over the globe, we have a very large delegation of my staff and lay colleagues, including Vicki Schoenfeld, our Chief Operating Officer, Rabbi Noah Marins, our Director of Intergroup Relations, and some of the lay leadership of AJC, Harriet Schleifer, who chairs our Project Interchange, and Elaine Petchek, who graciously endowed the department that I've been working at for many, many years. My sister-in-law, Anna Rutgers here, came up from Washington, D.C. She discovered that whatever the difficulties are in Riverdale, they pale by comparison to what's going on in Washington now, so welcome very, very much as well. The people who came furthest of all, though, is my son Eitan and his bride, my daughter-in-law Simi, who came all the way from London together with Liati, as Rabbi Krauss mentioned. So this has really been a very special family event for us. So thanks to all of you for joining us. Thanks to all of you for, number one, coming out on such an evening, providing us with a great deal of strength and support through some very, very difficult times. And I want to thank so many of you here, and so many actually who are not here, who contributed to making this such a successful effort. It's raised over $100,000 for SAR, which many of us have been extremely gratified by. And on a personal level, I think Edith and myself, it's meant a sense of solidarity and support that far transcends the monetary value. So thanks to all of you, both for coming, for your friendship, for your support, and again, we'll have much more to say later on. I'd like to call first upon my daughter, Ilana, my son, Eitan, and my oldest grandson, Ian. Want to come up here? She can come up also.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of you for coming. Your presence means so much to our family. In light of the sadness of this event, I thought I'd share some of my own memories of Yehuda from our childhood. Yehuda was born when I was in first grade. I visibly remember Rabbi Cohen coming to get me in the middle of the day to tell me my father was here to bring me to the hospital to see my new baby brother. For some reason, I was beyond embarrassed and started crying. One of Eitan's friends mentioned at Shiva that Yehuda was everybody's baby brother. Well, he was, and he made an excellent doll, far beyond his baby years, for me and my friends to play with. Dacia and Michelle and I would spend hours playing house with our real-life doll. Tamar and I would tease Yehuda and her sister Dahlia about being in love with each other, secretly hoping that they would get married so we could be sister-in-laws. Within our own home, Eitan and I coined Yehuda the Wrecker. He was always wrecking our buildings and our Lego sets. In turn, he and Eitan called me the Weasel. Something to do with my tattling, but I don't remember any of that. My father always referred to the years of our childhood at SAR for my brothers and I as the wonder years, which probably didn't speak much for our adolescence. But as a parent, I can understand the term as the years of ease when problems were minimal. I think past the days of my dad on all fours and us climbing on him like he was a jungle gym. As we got older, I remembered social struggles for both myself and Eitan. This was not the case for Yehuda. Yehuda's social circle only expanded as he headed into 7th and 8th grade. His side of the room in our apartment, where my mom had installed a wall separating the boys, only got more crowded with friends, to the point that Eitan and I were both jealous and proud. Unfortunately for Yehuda, there were quite a few years of darkness that followed these wonder years. However, as more memories flood through my eyes, I see Yehuda holding his nephews and niece soon after they were born, and as they got older, engaging with them and playing with them way more than I ever did as a parent. Every time Ari and I went on vacation, my parents babysat, they called Yehuda for reinforcements and energy, and I believe that both my children and Yehuda were lit up with love and care, and those times were beyond special, beyond wondrous. Those times were enhanced even more with the presence of Shani in our family, who, standing next to Yehuda, loving him, brought him to a happier place. How apropos to be honoring Yehuda's memory in a place that brought him such happiness. Currently, I come into this building at least once a week. It is a place that not only brings back my own memories of skipping through the hallways, but now it is a place of happiness for my children. It is a place of comfort for them and us in this time of loss. It is a place of family where my kids see their cousins on a daily basis. It is a place of laughter where my children see and play with their friends. While Yehuda did not have children, I am honored to have the closest thing to his legacy, his niece and nephews, attend the school where he will be forever remembered. Life moves on, and I want my kids to run and laugh and grow within these halls. I am grateful to all of you to have my kids do that with a constant and permanent reminder of my brother's life. Thank you. And here's you.
Thank you all for coming. We are here to remember an amazing man, my uncle, Yehuda Bayme. Yehuda was so amazing because he played board games with me, he went to the park with me, and right after Shabbos he would call if we could go to Sports Time USA. I miss him so much, and I think about it every day. Yehuda, I will always love you and miss you.
I wasn't here for the funeral, I wasn't here for the Shiva. So this is the first time I'm really dealing with my brother's death in public. So I'm a bit overwhelmed, sorry, it's because I am. I've been trying to convince Yehuda to visit me in England. I was enticing him with a train ride up to Scotland, hiking in the glens, rocky beaches, grassy moors, cozy pubs, the finest the UK had to offer. It would be a sort of bachelor party for him and a last trip before fatherhood for me. He said it sounded awesome and would try to make it happen. But then a few days later, he emailed me to say that he wouldn't be able to make it, that it wasn't the right time for him. No further explanation. I was angry. Yehuda and I didn't often get to hang out, and I felt I was making more of an effort at our relationship than he. He died 2 months later, and I never got to see him again. Over the past few months, as I've tried to make sense of his life, I keep coming back to this exchange. I was angry. I thought that maybe if he visited, a butterfly effect would mean that he'd still be alive today. But it made me more angry because I thought Yehuda had acted lame. Here I was offering us a chance at adventure together, and he couldn't even give me a good reason why not. But I think I know now why Yehuda stayed home. Whenever I spoke to him about how his relationship with Shani was going, it was never a simple answer. It was always something along the lines of, I can be difficult to get along with, or relationship takes work. He always seemed to be trying to improve on it. And I'm not trying to make any qualifying comments on it. I'm just trying to say that Yehuda was dedicated more than anything to doing the right thing, to nurturing his relationship with Shani, towards meticulously striving for something that was fair. How many overseas vacations can a working man take in 1 year? 1, maybe 2 if they have the money. Yehuda's vacation time was earmarked for Shani, for making their relationship better. And I think the legacy Yehuda would have liked to have passed on is that he was committed to do the right thing, that he struggled for the right thing. In his files this weekend, I found a folder this thick with donation receipts to what would seem to me anyone who asked him for money. He was dedicated to Torah learning. He studied Daf Yomi. His patience for people less fortunate than himself far exceeded mine, and he wanted nothing more than to start a family with Shani. I think Yehuda suffered for his view of what was right. It's what made him a complex person. It no doubt made his life more difficult than it could have been. But I don't think he could have been more noble because of it. Yehuda, I'm very proud of the way you lived your life.
This tragedy, as most of you know, really hit us as a bolt from the blue. It's the last thing we expected, last thing we thought about, last thing really on our minds. Rabbi Shmuel Hain of Young Israel North Riverdale sort of stepped into the breach, precisely at that moment. Someone that had known his father many years previously. I knew him somewhat more casually and as a neighboring rabbi. But he came through for us precisely at the time when we needed that assistance, and he's become a good friend since. Rabbi?
After spending just a little time with his son-in-law, Yitro cuts right to the point. Vayomer chotein Moshe elav, lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. Moses' father-in-law says to him, the thing you're doing, it's not right. Even before I knew that the dedication for the guidance department office was Sita Yashar V'Hatov, I've been thinking all week about Yitro's indictment, Lo Tov Hadavar Asher Ata Oseh. There's only one other place in the Torah where those two words, Lo Tov, appear back to back. Probably familiar to many. Lo Tov Heyot Adam Levado. In the opening chapters of Bereshit, God declares that it's not good for man to be alone. And I think Yitro was making the same assessment of Moshe's hierarchical adjudication of cases. Lo Tov Hadavar. It's not good when we try to do things all on our own. In the aftermath of the horrific accident that killed Yehuda, there were many, many people in the community who assisted the Baymes and who assisted me in trying to help the Baymes. There was Jeff Merdler, spent hours with us, helping us in ways you can't imagine. Rabbis Weiss and Rabbi Exler, who after a long, impossible night met us as we returned home and relieved me of the duty. And really for me and Sherry and for the entire family, including Eitan and Simi, who we were only able to FaceTime with. The real source of strength came from the recognition that we had each other. Lo tov hadavar. This was a very terrible, terrible thing, but it reinforced for me the importance of being able to lean on others and to connect with others. Yehuda himself really strove, as Eitan said, to work at his relationships with others, his relationship with Shani in a way that he wouldn't be alone, that he wouldn't be by himself. I think it's most fitting that the Baymes have dedicated this particular space in Yehuda's memory. because this space will be a place where kids will have someone to talk to, where children who are going through a difficult period will be able to speak with somebody and not feel like they are alone. Lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. It's not good to try to do things all on our own. Hopefully one of the things that Yehuda will continue to inspire all of us is that lesson, is the lesson of Lo Tov, that you need to connect with others. You need to make sure that your relationship with others is first and foremost what you're working on. And that all of us, young people, kids, students, will have someone that they can talk to, someone they can connect with, someone that will make sure that they are able to walk away from their particular difficult moment in a way which makes them feel connected and loved.
Well, 20 years ago, I was taking a cab ride from the airport to Riverdale. The driver sort of engaged me a bit as to what I was doing. When she found out I was Jewish, she asked me if I knew Rabbi Avi Weiss, and I responded quite affirmatively. So she said, I'm absolutely amazed. He goes anywhere, any place, anytime, for anyone he can help, Jew or Gentile. Sort of knew it intellectually and nodded in agreement, but during these dark days, I found out it was quite real. Rabbi Weiss and his rabbinic team, Rabbi Steve Exler, Rabbi Sarah Horowitz, Rabbi Ari Hart, they spared absolutely no effort to do whatever possible during the most difficult times we've had to experience. I'd like to call on for a few words. Rabbi?
Perhaps it's not coincidental that Yehuda's name is suffused with letters that spell the name of God. Yud Kei Vav Kei. When one hears of such losses, and there have been too many these past few weeks and months. Man omar, man idaber, man itztadak. What can any human being say? What words can we speak? How can we justify such a hara? Only God understands. Yehuda. And Yehuda's name is associated with being a surety or a guarantor concerning the biblical Yehuda. He says, Ki avdecha arav et hana'ar. He cared for others. That was Yehuda. And in speaking to many people who have memories of Yehuda, that was the common thread. And I just jotted down, just phrases that people recalled when thinking about Yehuda. Eager to help, kind, giving, and sweet. And Rav Stephen mentioned when he was behind the counter, Yehuda had joy in asking, how are you doing? And I feel a special affinity to Yehuda because he was constantly searching, evolving, maturing. And Stephen, my dear friend Stephen, you said it very well at the Levaya when you said, I believe, I was on the outside as a Kohen, that Yehuda may not have realized himself how much he was loved. Yehuda is mourned by so many, by his Kala Shani, lost her parents, siblings, friends, and Edith, and Stephen. It's not the way of the world. It shouldn't be the way of the world for parents to have to bury a child. You've seen this as the way you've grieved the whole family with heart, soul, and mind. But for me, the word that comes to mind as I've watched you mourn is the word dignity. As I've watched you say Kaddish day in and day out. And for me, the thought that comes to mind is something that Rabbi Soloveitchik once said. He wrote, "We're all born with a certain fate, concerning which we'll never understand. Fate is a metaphysical, speculative question. We can't control our fate. But as you dedicate this space, what you're really doing is you're turning fate as best as you can into a new destiny. As Esther Waxman, who lost her son Nachshon, once said, she was asked, how are you able to continue? And she responded, I had to ask myself, will I be a victim of my fate? Or will I initiate a new destiny? It's an impossible challenge, but one worthy of trying to remember, never to allow what we cannot do to control what we can do. We'll never be able to control what happened, but you were able to control something by creating this space. And for me, the feeling and the sentence that comes to mind, friends, is that sentence from Shmuel Bet when King David lost his son. Imagine. And in that sentence, the word B'ni, my son, appears more times in one sentence than it appears anywhere else. To paraphrase King David, using Yehuda's name, Vaya'al al aliyat hasha'ar. And David, father and mother, and siblings, parents went to the upper chamber, Vayefk, and cried. V'cho ahama b'lechto. And this is what David said as he moved forward. B'ni, B'ni, Yehuda. B'ni, B'ni, Yehuda. My son Yehuda. Mi yitain muti ta'achtecha Yehuda. much we care and how much we love you.
Difficult moment, perhaps is here at last. It's very difficult to follow words as moving as those who preceded me. Jewish tradition distinguished between memory and remembrance, two words that in our own language we tend to use interchangeably. But there's a distinct meaning difference between them. Memory is about something we recall from time to time. It may be about someone that we love, someone who we have some recollection of. Remembrance, the Hebrew word zikaron, as opposed to zecher, means something constant, someone that continues to speak to us on a day-to-day basis, someone whose legacy stays with us, no matter how long we are removed from him or her. I think the purpose of this dedication and the guidance office that will permanently bear Yehuda's name is a statement that we want to make this into a remembrance and not just a memory. For two reasons. First is the obvious one. From the days of David, if you will, to the 21st century, there is no way that the loss of a child would not speak to you on a day-to-day basis. Not a day will pass when somehow, somewhere, someplace, some remembrance of who Yehuda was will come back to speak to us. But second, and perhaps more importantly, and this is what I'll try to develop here and elsewhere as well, is that there's much to be learned from Yehuda's life that we can walk away with, that will serve as a constant remembrance. Why SAR? All our children, and now our grandchildren, have been educated here. The school has a wonderful reputation for encouraging individuality, for taking every child as an end rather than as a means, for expressing the love of the child, the school's love of that child as an individual. In the case of Yehuda, he prospered here for 11 years. From 3-year nursery all the way through middle school graduation. It encouraged his individual curiosity. He was always asking questions. One time in Israel, he was about 8 years old, I took him on a trip to the Israel Museum, and he started going into this, almost a rant of, why did Jesus want to invent a new religion? I was a little embarrassed by his doing it so loudly. I tried to say, I'll explain it to you sometime. He says, no, I want an explanation now. It's kept going on for five minutes. Finally, a noted professor of Judaic studies at an American university recognized me and said, you really do owe him an answer. Another time when he was in kindergarten, another parent, actually here tonight, stopped me in the street and said, did you hear what happened in class yesterday? So I said, no. He said, well, Yehuda Bayme got into this real argument with the teacher, saying the Red Sea could not have split. And when the teacher said it did split, he said, no, there's no way it could have split. And again, this went on apparently for quite some time. And again, I admired SAR for tolerating the heresy, if you will, for encouraging the inquisitiveness and the willingness to challenge authority. These were happy years. SAR provided him with a wonderful set of friends who served as his social circle, served as his nucleus, the area for which he sprouted and grew from. SAR also provided him with a beautiful set of values. This was mentioned by Eitan. He was kind and generous to a fault. Took a look at that file of receipts from charities. They ranged all over the map, both particularly Jewish charities and universal ones as well. But I walked away with, and looking at it, as I said, anyone who approached him, no matter what his income level was, He approached Yehuda for a donation, even though he was at such a young age. He believed you had to give. Reminded me of, I see one of my high school instructors, Rabbi Hellman is here, Rabbi Yossi Blau. One of the things I learned in Maimonides was the notion that giving, no one ever grew poor from giving charity. You give and give and give until it hurts. Somehow I never told that to Yehuda, but Yehuda walked away from SAR with that message in mind. All of the SAR anecdotals spoke about how he was a kind, gentle-hearted soul, someone who had a good word for everyone, someone who was, again, generous to a fault. At Blot Shop, where he worked for several years, people who went in there always commented about how eager he was to help people with their packages. If people did not have enough money to pay, he'd say, don't worry, pay me later, even though he knew he would ultimately be held accountable if they would not pay him on that in due time. Where did he get all that from? I think first and foremost, he got it from his mother, one of the kindest, most generous and gentle people I've ever been privileged to know. I think he got it from SAR, which taught these values and midot, characteristics that define the role of the Jew in the broader society. And I think he got it from the Riverdale community, which has always been known for its open-handedness, for its charitableness, and as all of you have demonstrated by coming tonight, its warmth and friendship and love. But then there were also, as Ilana mentioned, there were the dark years, the difficult years. Yehuda faced a range of mental health challenges. We became aware of them only during his college years. It was devastating for him as he saw others in his age group succeed while he was not able to. We found a note he left behind saying, I really haven't known much in the way of success since high school. It was devastating to us to watch him suffer as he struggled so strongly with the challenges that he was confronting. Back in the late 1980s, when Yehuda was prospering, Edith and I was taking a walk in Riverdale, beautiful Riverdale night, and she turned to me and said, you know, everything's gone so wonderfully. I just have this feeling something terrible is going to happen. It took 20 years, but that premonition, such as it was, came back to haunt us. There are lots of lessons to be learned here, and forgive me if I may share them with you. I think it's something for the entire community. Number one, as Rabbi Weiss mentioned, Yehuda persevered in the face of his difficulties. He never gave up. He was constantly trying to better himself. He buttonholed virtually everyone in Riverdale, asking for guidance and counsel as to what he should be doing and how he should be going about improving himself. He found in Shani someone to care for. He learned how to assert himself. He learned how to make decisions. He was clearly in a better place at the time of his untimely passing. I think second, there's a message here to the community of how do we handle mental health challenges? Have we come around to the view that mental health issues are like any other form of health issues? We need to see professionals. We need to get the right medications. We also need the visitors who come and make us feel somewhat better about ourselves. Oftentimes we don't do that. We tend to think of, sure, I'll visit someone who's in the hospital because he or she is suffering from cancer, but we may not feel all that comfortable when it comes to mental health issues. The Jewish community, particularly the modern Orthodox one, which I love and cherish and so I'm very much a part of, places an enormous premium on success. And we faced up to the fact that so many of us will not be that successful. How do we relate to them? How do we integrate them into our community? How do we continue working, befriending them, living alongside them, and keeping them as valued, cherished parts of the community we're trying to build? Yehuda's passing, his shocking death, does evoke many wonderful things about Riverdale, about SAR, and what SAR has meant to the broader Jewish community. It evoked a great deal of love on our part for the Riverdale Minyan, which is a newly formed minyan we've been part of for the last 6 months. Yehuda chose to announce his engagement. It was the very first simcha, if you will, the very first joyous occasion announced at the minyan. He looked forward to celebrating his wedding with the members of the minyan, with bringing it into the ongoing Shabbat services, making an occasion where all could celebrate together. His passing, though, marked an enormous step in what that minyan has meant to Edith and myself. It demonstrated that the minyan was not only a place where people had gathered to worship together, as important as that may be, and as important as that was a stimulus and catalyst for it. It marked the maturation of that minyan from a house of worship to a caring community. In that sense, we look to all of you, all of Riverdale, that minyan in particular, and so many of our friends from outside of Riverdale, have served as enormous sources of strength, support, and solace during these incredibly difficult days. All the calls, personal visits, the expressions of friendship and love, those have been so deeply meaningful to us and have provided, if you will, I can't say a silver lining because there is none, but it's provided a good deal of solace under extremely trying circumstances. To be fair, we've not as yet recovered our sociability, our ability to be gracious hosts and to be part of the social scene of Riverdale. I hope in time that will come back to us. To be fair, our faith has been tested by this, and I can't say we've recovered that either. What I can say, while our faith may be theologically tested, our faith in peoplehood, community, family, and friends have been strengthened by this experience. Take one note of conclusion. I'm sure many of you may have thought today or noticed that today marks the 71st anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Obviously the greatest tragedy, not just in Jewish history, but in all of human history. In thinking about it, though, and relating it to this evening, I thought about the closing scene in Elie Wiesel's wonderful novel, Gates of the Forest. Wiesel's survivor, Gregor, comes to New York City and enters into a Hasidic shtibel. He's been through a great deal. The entire novel has been one long, excruciating experience. He goes over to the rabbi and he says, "Rabbi, how can you pray after all that has happened?" The rabbi answers, "How can you not pray after all that has happened?" In large measure, when I say our faith has been tested, yes, it has been tested, it will continue to be tested. And as someone just mentioned to me right before we started this evening, there are no answers, no easy solutions. But Wiesel's comment about how can we not have some faith, how can we not pray, that continues to speak to us. Thank you really to all of you for coming, and really again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for all of your support, your friendship, and your love. My trust.
The program will conclude in song led by Hazen Shem Kramer, David Glazer, as we go downstairs to formally dedicate the space that we've been speaking about. We could ask Shem and David to please lead the family, and then everyone else will join them to go downstairs. I want to just, before we do that, I want to take this opportunity to thank Sarah Hassan, Heidi Greenbaum, our development director, Heidi, our development director, and Sarah, who has organized every detail for this program tonight with such grace. Thank you very, very much.